All right, so this is not a normal scenery for a documentary, but we are here interviewing Ray.
Hello. Hi.
So, with the topic of mental health, I really wanted an insider on how they deal with it, what they've been through, things of that nature, so that way we can really understand what there is to know about mental health coming from a young adult like Ray. So, Ray, you want to do a little bit of just talking about yourself so that we can get that little person connection about you?
Okay. Um, so, um, I'd say the biggest part of my mental health life is my disorder, which is bipolar. I have like frequent ups and downs. I can, which is mania and depressive episodes. Mania is like kind of like going insane, doing things like on impulse, which I've had problems with. Um, a frequent trouble of mine, but this is not a huge problem. But the law can sometimes be involved, and it happens during these manic episodes. Um, hmm, and like during depressive episodes, there's keeping yourself in your room, uh, bad hygiene, and also like darker things, which self harm and suicidal thoughts, etc., which I have had. Um, I'd say my mental health journey began my freshman year of high school, um, and it kind of just kept getting worse and worse. Then there was a point where I had to be taken to the psych ward to kind of get myself like evaluated and kind of fixed up. That's kind of when things kind of started going upward. Um, and yeah, I've had plenty of like terrible incidents in school where I've thrown temper tantrums and kind of gotten very angry at teachers and students. Typically during these manic episodes where I would not necessarily have any control over my own emotions. Um, I wasn't really a kid who got in fights a lot, um, but I was rude and mean and physically physically like
Yeah.
not a great person. Uh, Up until like I started getting medicated for this kind of thing, I started taking Klonopin. I wasn't very nice at all to anyone, because I would either be like super like high on like energy and couldn't necessarily control myself, or I'd be depressed and I'd be like angsty, and like you would imagine an angsty teenager in high school would be. Um, yeah.
Yeah, taking a step away from the mental health,
Okay.
who is Ray? Who are you?
Who am I?
Who are you?
Ooh, wow. Um, I hmm. I'd say I'm. This is kind of hard to answer, but I typically answer with artist.
No, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
That leaves avenues of
Yeah.
like different ways you can go
Yeah.
with that. I like that. So, when did you learn first about the importance of mental health?
Um. Hmm. When I realized the risk of my own like of how I don't see importance in my own life, how the toll that it would take on people who care about me. I realized that mental health is less about me and more about people who care, who want me to stay alive. I mean, it is about me, but it's in reference to me, but it's um, I realized the importance of it when I decided that I needed to stay alive for someone. Um, yeah, that person's my sister, so she
Yeah,
also has bipolar, and we stay alive for each other.
that's great.
Yeah.
And so, do you feel that like poor mental health affects majority of young adults?
Majority of young, probably. I'm one of those people who believes that every person needs a therapist. I think everyone needs one person that like, and it could be like a psych student at a college, someone that they could essentially just pour their heart out into, without repercussion. Because there are plenty of people who can like a lot of people say that the job is like a parent's job to do that, but there are parents who are just like rude about that, who won't take that from a kid, and it'd be like, stop complaining, shut up, etc., etc. Um, I believe that, that if a parent can't do it at all, a therapist is 100% needed.
Yeah.
So,
So I picked up one of the factors you would say like that can cause the poor mental health would be like bad parenting or just a lack of like the parenting that is needed. It doesn't even need to be bad parenting. It's just the fact that they're not there.
yeah.
Any other factors that you would attribute to just like I would say the mental health crisis in young adults nowadays?
Um, School. A huge thing that impacted my mental health was not being recognized for not just like the bipolar disorder, but like ADHD, severe ADHD, and dyslexia, all these things not being recognized in schools, and essentially the same things that bad parents would do to their kids, telling them to shut up, essentially was what I got from teachers a lot. A huge thing that I got was it was not just that, but also like how some schools manage bullying is terrible. Apart from my life is Kick a Ginger Day. um, that's completely in the past, but that like goes to show that there's terrible things that still go on in schools. That's that's like objectively, if you were to like think about that, okay, that's funny, like, a day for like kicking gingers.
Yeah.
But when it's taken too far in schools and not managed and just like completely blown off by the faculty in schools, it's terrible, and it destroys children. It really destroys children.
I can only imagine. You know what? I'm not ginger, so I guess that's good for me. But, um, so a big thing with like talking about mental health, we talk about the struggle with
Hmm.
mental health. How would you describe a struggle? Like, what is struggling with mental health?
Um, every day, every single day. Struggling is like, um, when you get like a couple hours of sleep and you have to wake up to present this project. I'd say like mental health struggle. I feel like it can be like deeper than that, but it's like continuously getting yourself out of bed every single day as if there's this like giant weight on top of you keeping you from doing so, right? Um, Keeping yourself occupied, um, not not being alone, or giving yourself alone time if that's what you need. Struggle is doing the exact thing that you have to do to keep yourself from doing anything terrible to your own body, etc. Um, yeah.
So it's I would say it's pretty clear that like you struggle with that. That's something that
Yes.
you would attribute to yourself struggling with the mental health.
Yes.
Okay, and how like you kind of talked about like doing what you need to do. What are some of those things that you would do specifically?
Um, well, I found that I I can keep myself occupied around friends, right? Um, I'm more of an extrovert. I'm in some ways happier with other people. So to keep myself from going down into this hole, I stay around other people, and also to make sure that my manic episodes don't get too big. People can tell me to calm down. I stay around people who I trust will be able to tell me to do so, and won't like hype me up and be like, yeah, go jump off that bridge or whatever the hell. Um, uh, I also keeping a good like physical health, always caring for your hygiene. I think hygiene is like much more important for people who struggle with mental health, because there are some people who can sit in a dirty room and be like, there's nothing wrong.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, whenever I have like this dirty ass room, I definitely don't think there's anything wrong, but it can get horrific. It can be terrible, like like terrible things, like trashed ass room, food everywhere. Not having the mental strength to get out of bed. Um, yeah.
No, for sure. And so that would help your mental health. Is there anything specifically other than just like, your bipolar disorder? Like, is there anything that just absolutely destroys your mental health? Like something like, let's say you see someone that person is like a trigger.
Um, hmm. Yeah. I'd say for um, hmm. I think it's on my mind. I don't want to mention. I'm trying to
Got
think
it.
of something else.
That works.
Give me a moment, cause I do have triggers like throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, could you tell me the question one more time?
Yeah, is there any like triggers or something that kind of inhibits your mental health in a positive way? So it really just
Mm,
diminishes the mental health.
yes. Uh, I'd say when I don't have like any kind of like ADD accommodation recognized in a class, that happened recently. I dropped one of my classes because like I had a teacher who wouldn't recognize it at all. Um, and I was frustrated because I had to go through this like process of talking to my advisor and be like, this is not being recognized, um, like bringing it up everywhere so I could get it recognized in this class. Eventually, like my professor was stalling so much that I just had to like drop the whole class. It was so frustrating. Um, like realizing that like having this teacher not recognize me for the kinds of things I was struggling with sent me down the deep end, man. I I couldn't take it because it reminded me of how I was treated in high school and middle and elementary. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know there are often like plans to help with those classes, and I've heard a lot of those plans either not being recognized or just not being used at all. Do you have any other experiences like that?
Yes, I'd say so. College, at least the school seems to do a pretty good job of recognizing it. Um, I'd say it's more of a problem. It is more of a problem in public school, in like public high schools, middle schools. Just because like that's when like that's when kids like take their education a little bit more seriously, and it's a time where grades become like rather important, and it's also when they're like learning how to manage themselves. So in order to do that, they kind of need like there are some kids who need like genuine assistance because their brains aren't able to because everyone's brains are different, right? It's insanely important to like have these things recognized because if not, like kids with poor management skills, kids with bad dyslexia and ADD will not be able to like function in higher levels of education, right? If there are kids who aren't taught how to easily access books with assistance to reading and all that stuff, they will not be able to like do well reading in college. And it's the same thing. It's at least from my experience with ADD, it's very important with ADD because like um, there are some kids who have ADD worse than me. They need to develop a schedule and a way to like fix themselves and keep themselves on track 100% of the time. And if they do not have these accommodations in public school, then they will not be able to figure out how to do it in the real world. And they're going to be screwed essentially.
Yeah. I'm also gonna cough with you.
Yeah.
Um, so taking a step, not to the side, but on a different light about this, what in general do you know about depression and anxiety
It's a broad question.
intentionally?
What do I know? Um, uh, I don't have too much experience with anxiety, but I know depression actually like seems to stem, at least from me, from like existential, like very existential thought, which would lead to meaninglessness. Um, and then a lot about like depression is um, feeling like you are the only one in a sea of people who are all much different and more ahead. It's the same. It seems to be like your problems being like singled out. Um, yeah. Uh, can you tell me what else do you mean by this? Like,
Well, my follow up was going to be, so I would say one of the best ways to combat any issue, like, and specifically now, mental health, depression, anxiety, these sorts of
yeah.
things, is knowledge, knowing about it, getting people informed, fighting down the wall of stigmatism that there is around these subjects. So that way, people who are struggling, people who are fighting, can use the knowledge that they now have to work through it. And one of these, like, this knowledge would be how therapy can help, where you can get therapy, all the, like, how to go to a doctor and talk about your symptoms so that way you can receive medication that you may need, treatment that you may need. And with someone that's so involved like yourself and knowing about these things, but also like there's a level of like things that you may should know, and that again, that's not on you. Do you feel that resources are available to you in a way that they should be, whether
Hmm.
that's through school or your community? Like, I'm assuming there should be work that needs to be done, correct?
Not here.
Not here.
Definitely not here.
Got it.
Um, for luckily my family is like moderately well off. There are people who cannot afford therapists. That's a genuine problem. Also, especially with like um, the transphobic bills that have been passed. Some I believe wholeheartedly that these bills will cause suicide. So there's obviously an utmost need for some sort of protective service, some sort of therapy for these people. The problem is that it's not entirely accessible. It's really not accessible here at on this campus. I was they only treat people who have like moderate mental health problems,
Got it.
which I find absolutely like mind exploding because a huge thing about this is just having someone to speak with, to talk to. I I I'm it makes me feel like abnormal, you know? It makes a lot of kids feel abnormal and it probably contributes to their mental health. I mean to poor mental health
Yeah.
because you know, I was rejected from therapy here because uh, the email didn't explicitly say this, but it seemed like that my problems were a little too much for this university to handle. I understand that the therapists on at this university are probably not the best, but I think it's like better than nothing for me. I'd only want someone who will speak with me and who will say that my problems are human and real and not like, oh shit, you're too much, dog. Like I can't help you. Like go see a doctor. Like that's
What
frustrating. I don't have a car. I can't get to therapy off campus. You know, I can set up like telehealth, but that's really like telehealth is good. Um, but it's like it's kind of hard to like it's kind of hard for it to be like really helpful just because there's not really a person there. It's just someone on your phone. I can just be click bye, I'm done. You know, there's no kind of like pressure to keep me to stay there so I can focus on myself for a bit. Um, yeah.
I think that is, I can't think of the word. I want to say crazy. I want to say wild, but I don't think any of that explains it. There's a great quote about mental health
Yeah.
that's you wouldn't tell someone who broke their leg to just walk it off, to just deal with it. They go to the doctor, they get the cast. What's different about mental health, especially you would think that those who genuinely need the help, like a decent amount, would be prioritized, and now they're being told to go away.
Yep.
I That's interesting to me, and I have a little story about
Oh, story.
the caps. So for this documentary, I wanted to have Caps in here. I wanted to talk with a professional, get the stats, know what they know, because I assumed they would be informed about things like this because it is their job. Um, They told me they were too busy. I mean, I can't say anything about that. They say they're busy. They say they're busy. Um, but this makes me question whether or not if I get them in here, it's actually going to do any good, do anybody any good.
I think it's just like someone's mom, or something like a bunch of like volunteer mothers. That's totally fine, but the fact that they're like, come on, like you can't share like anything. It's disgusting.
Yeah. So we can get as specific as you'd like here, but I want you to think back on a time where your mental health was just low and what you did to deal with it, what resources were available to you at the time, how you were feeling. Just take us through the story.
Okay. Uh, there's one that was quite recent. Um, I had a little bit of I don't get panic attacks often, but I had a little bit of a crisis while I was working on a project. I got to work on like to start working on this project, and I essentially just broke down. I went deeper and deeper. Um, um, I started to resent myself, and then what I did to fix it was I'm very good at this. Since mental health in my family is taken insanely seriously, which a lot of other kids don't necessarily have the advantage of. They have parents who deny this kind of thing. Since it's taken insanely seriously in my family, it's bipolar is a history of people. My mom, my sister, my two of my aunts, my grandmother. Um, I called my sister. Um, Essentially, we like she stayed with me on the phone the entire time until I went over to the library to go see my friend. Eventually, I slept on his floor because I didn't necessarily trust myself in my own room. Um, there there was another time where where it was specific quite low. Um, since I have a therapist, I was able to contact her. Another struggle that a lot of people with mental health is, even if they have parents who are accepting for it, this is just on them, on the patient specifically. They don't want to burden anyone with it at all. That's why a therapist is insanely helpful, because you're paying them for your burdens, like or they are paid for their burdens. It should be by tax money, in my opinion, but they are paid for your own problems. So all all I had to do, this was about like my junior year. All I had to do was call her, talk with her, and then we got an evaluation over the phone. And then she eventually forced me to speak with my mother about how I was feeling, and what I was doing to myself as a result of how I was feeling. My mom took all the sharps and objects out of my room to keep me from doing so. I was given a curfew, and essentially the strict thing was placed upon me, which was okay. I slept in my parents' room, and then eventually I got evaluated at a hospital, um, and then I kind of came back. Um, I think what was like really helpful about that um, was it just kept me from like falling off, and therapy kind of allowed me to get like a little bit better. I took every day very slowly until I was able to slowly progress up. A lot of therapy is learning, so learning about who you are, and finding things to help yourself. Um, this event that I'm going to touch on after actually happened after this incident that happened junior year, when I was checked into a psych ward for 2 weeks. Um, I that was the part where my mental health was probably at its deepest. A lot of things prior to that had really torn me apart, and I kind of led myself to think that I shouldn't be alive. When I was caught by my parents and then checked into a psych ward. Um, the One of the things that they told me and gave me was writing was writing every day. I was a very energetic person in the psych ward. I wouldn't. I was loud and I was kind of disruptive to the other patients just because I didn't like being there at all, and I genuinely didn't think I was supposed to be there. Um, what they did was they kind of put me in a room and they said, they just told me to like write for a while, and then when I can't write anymore, just like sit. Um, it was very interesting because in this like silent room, white, um, the door was actually made out of the material made out of yoga mats, so you couldn't hurt yourself. Um, um, I kind of just sat there and wrote for an hour, and then I sat there in silence for like 30 minutes, and I got back to writing. I eventually wrote about 6 pages of just thoughts. I came out of the psych ward learning that to keep myself in check was to just write for hours and hours. Um, and I think that was the moment of most progression. It leads me now to call myself an artist because in order to keep myself alive, I have to essentially make art. Writing kind of turned into drawing, into painting, more creative stuff. Using outlets for my emotions. I would um there's a mental health patient that is also an artist, Brian Lewis Saunders. He's actually known for creating paintings, self portraits every day of himself, which always changed about how he was feeling. That was his therapy. When he was a kid, he had terrible. I don't remember what disorder he had, but he had homicidal and suicidal thoughts, and acted on upon them. He was known for stabbing people. He went to jail for stabbing people. By the time he went to college, he was about 26. He was completely institutionalized, and the way that he healed himself was drawing a portrait of himself every day. It was a form of keeping himself in check. I trailed off completely there, but I thought that was a wonderful story for me to tell.
That was perfect.
Thank you.
Especially the one thing I wanted to wrap up on was any recommendations that you would give to people struggling with mental health. I know you just really did a good job there. Any other last things that you would say to anyone who's struggling with mental health?
Of course. Plenty of creativity. Plenty of creativity. I just touched on that. Um, this isn't as creative, but like writing, obviously. Um, it doesn't have to be good. It can be the letter R 18 times, because eventually you're going to get bored of the letter R, and then you're going to go to the next letter, and then eventually you're going to have a full sentence. And then after that, you're just going to start writing about yourself, and you're going to start monologuing on paper. That is insanely helpful. Journaling. Um, Having what is known as a safety plan. That's probably incredibly important. If there's a friend of someone out there who has a therapist, if you don't have access to one, get a psych student from a college. Just develop a plan of people who have consent for you to just like stay in their room. I have a couple names down on mine. And those can be your parents too, but make sure you include some friends so you can do that at school. I'd say that is one of the most important things, because if you are in a state where you cannot keep yourself from hurting yourself, call them and say, hey, can I sleep on your floor? And you'll be all right for that night, and if you need to sleep there again, then you'll be all right for the next night. It's really good to have a solidified place where you can go to just like sit and be calm. That's it.
It almost feels lackluster to end this in any way at this point. I think everything that you've talked about is going to be very useful
Thank
for
you.
anyone who gives a listen. I hope you were able to get something out of this. Um, I appreciate your time. Anyone who can use this as another tool, another resource, will appreciate your time. And again, I really thank you for all of this. And I'm gonna go in the bathroom and cry.
Oh
So no, I'm
no.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Um, if are there how many people are gonna watch this? A billion?
I hope.
Okay. For anyone who is on the University of Hartford campus, you see me skateboarding around everywhere. Um, it's the one that's checkerboard, and I have a leather bag on me. You might be able to recognize me from my hair. If you want to speak with me, even if you don't know me, please do. Honestly, I love hearing about people's stories, and I guarantee any terrible thing that you've gone through is isn't outlandish, and I don't think it's abnormal. It's real. Please speak with me.
Thank you so much,
My camera?
everybody.
Okay.
All right. That's good.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.